Welcome back. I'm Susan and we're in the sewing studio again today. We will be working with hems on your sewing machine, doing blind hems, rolled hems, Pico hems on both wovens and knits for all kinds of garments and craft projects. A couple things you're going to want to have on hand. Most of the things you will have in your studio. One would be a hem gauge. This is a ruler that has a slider that you can leave at a certain point and adjust accordingly for the depth of your hem. You're going to want to have, of course, your blind hem foot. Now your foot may probably look something like this. It's going to have a guide towards the center of the needle position that's going to hold or align your folded fabric on your blind hems. You may have one that has an adjustable guide to it. A clear view or your standard foot, a rolled hem foot for your machine. Not all machines have this available to them. It depends upon the model. This is a 4mm, what I refer to as a Shirttail hem. So I'll be showing you how to hem a shirt today. A small pair of scissors, some straight pins, and your fabric would be, I'm going to use a sheer voile, a t-shirt knit, and just a plain cotton. You will also want to have your owner's or operator's manual or instruction book available to you for reference. So that's what we're going to be working with today, and I've got my machine already set up with white thread today so that you'll be able to see it, and a standard needle. Bobbin is the same. To get started, we're going to start with the basic blind hem. Now, I've gone and threaded my machine, and I've got a lightweight thread on here today. You could use a monofilament thread. That's entirely up to you. I don't like to put monofilament in my needle and bobbin for doing blind hems because the monofilament doesn't always lock on itself. So we're going to go ahead and attach the blind hem foot. I've selected the blind hem stitch from my machine, and I'll put that up on the screen so you can see it. And I've gone ahead and pre-folded up and pressed about 5/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch to finish my edge on the bottom of my hem of my garment. So we're looking at the inside of our garment, and I folded up the edge of the hem here. Whoops, sorry about that. And now I'm going to fold the hem the desired length. Now on your garment, you're going to want to use your hem gauge. All right, preset the size here and position that into the hem so that you can align the hem to the correct depth all the way around your garment. Since I'm just doing a small piece today, I'm not going to need that, but I wanted to show you how that worked. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin this. Just a couple of pins. To hold that in place. There we go. Okay. Now here's where a lot of people get confused on how to do a blind hem. You want the stitching on the hem part itself, not on the garment. You only want to pick up about 2 or 3 threads of the jump stitch into the fabric of the garment. But how do you stitch up a hem without it showing on the right side? What we're going to do is we're going to fold the fabric back. This is my inside of my garment again. And what I've done is I folded the right side of my garment to the right side of my hem. Does that make sense? The right side of my garment to the right side of my hem. And that's going to give me what they refer to as a Z fold. And you can see where it makes a Z. 1, 2, 3. So you have the inside of your garment here, you have the outside of your garment, and then you have your hem that's been folded up. And that's what makes your Z. Now, what I'm going to do is your stitching is going to be right along the folded edge of the hem itself, and then it's going to take a jump stitch just to catch a couple of threads of the fold of the fabric of the garment. so that you should not be able to see much, if anything at all. So the fold is going to go against the guide on the presser foot. All right, and this is how we're going to go ahead and stitch. So my stitching is going to keep the folded edge of the fabric that I folded up and pressed stitched down, and then the jump stitch of the stitch is going to actually catch the fold of the garment. And there you can see what the inside at a blind hem would normally look like. I've got my stitching along the fold here, and it's just taking a jump into the fold of the garment itself. Now when I turn my fabric out so I can see the right side of my garment, you can see where I got a couple stitches at the beginning that are a little too much. What it should look like is only just a couple of threads, okay, of the fold should all that be caught. Now when I press this, all right, you're not going to see hardly anything at all. When you have a woven fabric such as this, it's fairly thin. There's not going to be any time where you will not see the stitching unless you're using a monofilament thread. And this is when I go to press my actual hem. This is the hem here. I don't press it before. All I do is I press up or press under the raw edge to finish the edge. And that is your basic blind hem. Okay. Our second hem is a hand pick hem by machine. Now this is the same setup we had before. I've got my fabric pre-folded, my pins in place. I'm going to fold my garment right sides together to the hem just like we did before. Okay, but this time rather than exposing the one little edge here to stitch on, I'm going to completely cover it with my garment, and I'm going to put the guide right against the fold of both the garment and the hem. Now when I'm stitching, I'm not stitching through any fabric. I'm stitching out in the air. And I'm just catching a couple of threads of the fold and the hem at the same time. And what I get is no stitching on the fabric there. The same type, just a couple of threads picked up on the hem so you can't see it. That's your blind hem. And I'll see if you can see it now. You've got what it looks like, just you've done this by hand. It's not. You saw me stitch it. It's all done on the machine, but since I was stitching out the fabric and just the jump goes into the fold, you're not seeing any of the actual stitching. So it looks like you've done it all by hand. So that's your hand pick stitch by machine. When working with a knit, such as a t-shirt or sweatshirt knit, you're going to do the same type of fold where you're putting the right sides together, leaving a small amount of the hem exposed, aligning it with your guide on your presser foot. But your stitch will be different. There is, on most machines, a blind hem for knits. It looks just like the standard blind hem, but it has a slight zigzag to the stitching between the hem itself. Now here again, you're going to pick up just a couple of threads of the fold, and that zigzag on the edge is going to finish off the inside edge of the fabric. So when you're done, There's what it looks like on the inside, and here's what it looks like on the outside. A second hem finish that you can do with a knit is what they refer to as a Pico Stitch. Now this is where you take your standard blind hem and you would mirror it if you don't have the actual stitch. I'm going to change out my blind hem foot and attach my clear view or applique foot or satin stitch foot. You can use your standard foot as well. The clear view foot just allows me to see a little bit better. You still want the guide in front of the needle to keep the fabric from rolling. But what I'm going to do is just run this stitch right along the edge of my fabric. Now the guides on your stitch plate should also help you. Refer to your manual for this stitch and check with your dealership. They might have classes involved with this so that you can also take advantage of that. So what we're going to do with this is we're actually going to stitch just off the fabric with the jump stitch, and it's going to the right this time instead of to the left, and then it's going to stitch into the fabric itself on the right hand side. Now it looks like this is wrong. This should not be doing this. It's making a mess of things. But watch what you see what happens when I finish up with this space here. So while you're stitching it, it looks horrible. But look how pretty it is when it's done. This is great for nightwear, for children, for ladies lingerie and so forth. It's a great way to do that. You can also do this with lingerie fabric, not just with a t-shirt knit. The t-shirt knit gives you a little bit more of a picot edge, but the lingerie fabric is real pretty accent rather than working with lace. The next hem I'd like to share with you is a Shirttail hem or rolled hem by your sewing machine. It does require a special foot, just like the blind hem foot is a special foot. Your machine may or may not come with one of these. Most machines that I've seen that do offer a rolled hem come with a 2 or 2.5. This is actually a 4. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit larger hem. It's great for napkins, men's or ladies' shirts or blouses. You can also use this for lingerie. Makes a nice one to use that picot edge with. Again, if you don't feel like you want to do a raw edge when you stitch the picot, you can do a rolled hem with this and do the picot edge. But if you look at the very end of the foot itself, it actually has a curl that's going to curl the fabric for you as it's fed through the machine. Let's go ahead and get this attached. There we go. Now when you first get this started, you want to trim off just a very small corner of your fabric. I'm not going to take off a lot because remember this is only a 4mm seam, so it's fairly small. So I'm just going to trim off just a small corner. Now I'm going to manually start my roll. So I'm going to fold it once, then I'm going to fold it again. To aid in getting this into the presser foot, I'm just going to hold that fold with a pin, and then I'm going to slide it right into my machine. Now I'm going to remove the pin. I'm going to drop the presser foot, and we're going to just choose a standard straight stitch. And I'm going to move my needle position slightly, just off center to the left. That's a personal preference, you don't have to. Now in order to keep this fabric going into the machine correctly, I'm going to roll that right around my thumb. So I'm just going to turn my hand slightly. So I'm going to hold the fabric and just rotate it around on my thumb. Okay, and we'll go ahead and start this seam. And if I keep the raw edge of my fabric against where that foot just starts to take the dip, it's going to have just the right amount of fabric in that seam. And there you can see where I have a nice shirt tail hem. Now when you want to turn the corner, again, it works the same way. You may want to trim off a little bit of the fold itself here and do again the same thing going around the next one. But you're not going to turn a corner as much as you're going to stitch a full side and then come down the next side. A couple little tricks I want to show you. First off, I'm going to trim away just a little bit of this double folded hem at the very end where my corner is. So I'm going to take out at least just the corner. Can you see how that's being cut off there? Like so. Okay. Now I'm going to stitch right along inside the hem itself and attach just a couple of inches, maybe 3 inches, 4 inches of washout stabilizer. And I'm going to put it towards the bottom, like so. And I just want to attach it by running a small stitch right through the hem itself. Now to do that, I'm going to line the raw edge of my piece against the inside of the outer toe on the right hand side. So we're just going to take just a regular stitch. I don't have to do anything special. We're just going to go a couple stitches like so. Okay? That just attaches it. Now I'm going to fold the stabilizer over my hem, my raw edge, like that, just in case it. Then I'm going to fold the first roll, fold the second roll. Stabilizer is still rolled up right inside. Okay, there's my stitching. You can see it's right on the edge. Now I'm going to slide this underneath my presser foot, and it's hard for you to see. I'm going to rock my needle down into my fold, right on the edge where I normally would be stitching. Now I'm going to take my pin, stick it through the hem, not all the way through the outside, just through the rolled part. And I'm going to put it up inside the roll of the presser foot as if it had already been stitched. So I'm just going to put it right into place. Okay? Drop my presser foot, and I'm going to hold on to the stabilizer that's extending out the back of the foot. There we go. And we're going to stitch. Now if you can't fit the fabric underneath the presser foot, you may have too small of a presser foot. In other words, you may want to go to the next size roll for the fabric you're working on. For instance, I'm using a 4, but if I was using a heavier weight fabric, I may want to use a 6. Okay. And there is my folded corner. To do a rolled hem on something fine and sheer, such as this organza, I'm going to do the same little trick that we just did with the rolled hem with the washout stabilizer, and we're going to stitch the washout stabilizer to the fabric just for a couple of inches, or not even a couple inches, a couple stitches. Okay, just to anchor it. And then again, we're going to wrap the hem with the interfacing, the washout stabilizer. And again, fold it over twice. There we go. Slide it back under the machine and rock the needle down into the corner. And here's where it becomes easier to get your fabric up into the guide on the presser foot because the stabilizer is actually aiding you. And what I'm doing is I'm just sliding the pin into the fabric and working it right around the guide for the hem. Again, holding the stabilizer in back of the foot. And we're just going to roll that right around. And I get a real pretty stitched hem. So even if you don't have a serger, this is a great way to go ahead and finish off your seams or your hems. If you liked my video today, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be informed of my next YouTube.